The moment you meet someone, something powerful and almost invisible happens in your brain, because within just a few seconds, often before a single full sentence is spoken, your mind has already formed a judgment about who that person is, whether they're trustworthy, confident, intelligent, or even likable. And this process is not random. It's rooted in what psychologists call thin slicing, a concept popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, which describes our brain's ability to make rapid decisions based on very limited information. And while this might sound like a flaw, it's actually an evolutionary advantage, because historically humans needed to quickly assess whether someone was a threat or an ally. And even though we no longer live in survival-based environments, our brains still operate using that same fast judgment system, which means that whether you like it or not, people are constantly forming impressions of you almost instantly. And these impressions are incredibly sticky, meaning once they're formed, they tend to influence how everything else about you is interpreted, a phenomenon closely related to the halo effect, where one positive or negative trait shapes the perception of your entire personality. So if someone perceives you as confident in the first few seconds, they're more likely to assume you're also competent and trustworthy. And if they perceive hesitation or awkwardness, they may unconsciously associate that with insecurity or lack of authority, even if that's not who you really are. And this is why first impressions matter far more than most people realize, because they don't just influence how people see you initially. They set the frame for every interaction that follows. And the truth is, people don't judge you based on your intentions. They judge you based on signals, subtle cues that your brain sends through your body language, your tone, your eye contact, your posture, your timing, and even your facial expressions. And one of the most powerful of these signals is confidence. Not loud or aggressive confidence, but calm, grounded certainty. Because studies in social psychology consistently show that people are drawn to individuals who appear self-assured. And this doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you have to be present. Because presence communicates control, and control communicates safety. And safety makes people more likely to trust you. And trust is the foundation of a strong first impression, and this is where most people get it wrong. They focus too much on what to say instead of how they show up. But the reality is that your words make up only a small percentage of how you're perceived, while your nonverbal communication does most of the work. And that includes things like maintaining steady but not intense eye contact, having an open posture instead of closed-off body language, speaking at a measured pace rather than rushing, and allowing pauses instead of filling every moment with nervous chatter, because silence, when used correctly, actually signals confidence rather than awkwardness. And another key factor in first impressions is warmth, because while competence earns respect, warmth earns connection, and people are far more likely to engage with someone who feels approachable and genuine, which is why something as simple as a slight smile, a relaxed tone, or showing curiosity about the other person can dramatically shift how you're perceived. And this balance between confidence and warmth is crucial, because too much confidence without warmth can come across as arrogance, while too much warmth without confidence can come across as weakness. And the goal is to combine both in a way that feels natural and authentic. And another interesting aspect of first impressions is the role of consistency, because your brain is constantly looking for patterns. So if your verbal message doesn't match your nonverbal signals, people experience what's called cognitive dissonance, a kind of mental discomfort that makes them less likely to trust you. For example, if you say you're confident but avoid eye contact and speak hesitantly, the brain will prioritize the nonverbal cues over your words, because nonverbal signals are harder to fake and therefore perceived as more honest. And this is why alignment between what you say and how you say it is so important. And beyond body language and tone, your appearance also plays a role, not in terms of attractiveness alone, but in terms of how well your presentation matches the context, because humans use visual cues as shortcuts to make judgments. So dressing appropriately for the environment and presenting yourself in a clean and intentional way signals that you understand social norms and respect the situation, which again builds trust. And trust is everything when it comes to first impressions. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because first impressions are not just about how others perceive you. They also influence how you perceive yourself, a concept known as self-perception theory, where your behavior shapes your internal state. So when you intentionally adopt confident body language and controlled speech, you don't just look more confident, you actually start to feel more confident. And this creates a feedback loop where your internal state and external behavior reinforce each other, making your presence more authentic and compelling. And this is important because people are incredibly good at detecting incongruence. Even if they can't explain it, they can feel when something is off, and that feeling can weaken your first impression. So authenticity becomes a key factor, not in the sense of being unfiltered or overly casual, but in the sense of being aligned and genuine in how you present yourself. And another powerful element of first impressions is timing, because how quickly and smoothly you respond in a conversation can signal confidence and social awareness, while long pauses, interruptions, or talking over others can create friction and reduce likability. And this is why social awareness, the ability to read the room and adjust your behavior accordingly, is such a valuable skill, because it allows you to match the energy of the interaction without losing your own sense of self. And one more thing that plays a huge role is emotional contagion. The idea that emotions are transferable, meaning the way you feel can influence how others feel around you. So if you enter a room with calm, positive energy, people are more likely to mirror that state. And that immediately enhances your first impression, because people associate you with how you made them feel. And this brings us to one of the most important truths about first impressions, which is that they are less about perfection and more about clarity. Clarity in your signals, clarity in your presence, and clarity in your intent. Because when your signals are clear and aligned, people don't have to guess who you are. And when they don't have to guess, they feel more comfortable engaging with you. And that comfort turns into connection, and connection is what makes an impression last. And here's the part most people overlook. First impressions are not fixed. They are powerful, but they are not permanent. Because while the initial judgment happens quickly, it can be reshaped over time through consistent behavior. But the catch is that it takes more effort to change a first impression than to create a strong one from the beginning, which is why understanding this psychology gives you such an advantage. Because instead of leaving your image to chance, you can intentionally design how you show up, not in a fake or manipulative way, but in a way that reflects your best and most grounded self. And when you do that, you're no longer at the mercy of other people's assumptions. You're guiding them, subtly but effectively, towards seeing you the way you want to be seen. And once you understand that first impressions are built on signals, not words, on presence, not performance, everything starts to change, because you stop trying to impress people and start focusing on being clear, grounded, and intentional. And that shift alone can completely transform how people respond to you. And once you see how fast and how deeply these judgments are formed, you realize something important. You don't get a second chance at a first impression, but you do get full control over how that first impression is created. And once you master that, every room you walk into becomes an opportunity rather than a risk. And that is the real psychology of first impressions.